Improving Customer Experience with GCP event. My name is Rick Erickson. I'm the Chief Cloud Strategist over at Augusto, and I'm excited to be here speaking to you all about how Augusto helps organizations migrate and adopt cloud services using some of our adoption models and our methodologies. And what better way to start an event like this than to do that through customer experience. And we're going to be talking to both TCN and Unilog and having them tell their own story and their own journey of the kind of workloads that they've deployed in Google's cloud platform and how that's impacted their organization. So starting out, I think what I want to do is set up this talk a little bit. And one of the things that is interesting to me is if you look back about 20, 25 years, the kind of work that we were all doing when we were deploying infrastructure looked a lot differently. We had resources that were responsible for managing infrastructure. We had resources responsible for supporting infrastructure. We had to have skill sets across networking stacks and physical hardware stacks, in addition to understanding all the logic that was part of the systems that we were deploying and developing on. And it took us many, many months and even sometimes years to stand up the right topology to support a given set of customer use cases. Fast forward to today, and clouds have changed the way that we operate and the way that we think. And this is an interesting opportunity for us in the world that we operate in today to consider these questions. Google has surfaced these services to us that it is used to develop and deploy its own systems and its own applications, and those applications have now been made available to us, both tooling, platform services, and others, so that we can leverage that to become much more efficient as an organization and focus on what we do best, are unique. And that's really the story of what I want to tell today is how that's going to work. And maybe one thing to level set today is that if you have any questions, please consider taking those down, and then at the end of our talk, we'll leave about 10 minutes left to do some Q&A with our panelists, and please come up to the microphone and feel free to ask any questions that you have of that team. All right. Well, without further ado, let me invite up to the stage the first individual here, which is Joe Bennett, Senior Vice President over at Unilog. Thanks, Joe. And I'm also very excited to bring up Jesse Bird, CTO and co-founder over at TCN. So maybe as we start here, what I'd like to do is have each of you just give us a quick snapshot of your organization. Tell us what you do, tell us what makes your organizations unique, and we can then move on to kind of your use case.
Certainly. So a little bit about Unilog. Unilog Content Solutions was born in 1998, so 20 years ago, and it was born as a data services company. And when I say a data services company, in essence, we would enrich your product data. We weren't born to enrich all product data. We wouldn't build anything about fashion, for example. We were built to specifically enrich data about industrial products. So we were born in Bangalore, India. We were born to exploit highly educated mechanical engineering talent at low cost and build, back then, print catalogs. We've morphed since then in 2014, and we have a software platform called Sim2, which powers industrial distributors' B2B e-commerce sites. Specifically, our customers are all hard goods distributors.
Thank you, Joe. And Jesse, can you give us a little bit of a snapshot of TCN?
Yeah. So thanks. So TCN, we were founded in 1999, and so we've been around for a pretty long time. We were delivering SaaS-based contact center solutions really before SaaS was cool. I mean, it was really even before VoIP was cool. So we've been, from the inception, we thought that this internet thing was cool, that this VoIP thing was cool, and we were going to deliver it over the internet. And in a lot of ways, we were really, really early to the market, and in some ways, maybe even too early to the market. But we persevered, and over the years, we've developed a pretty full suite of contact center products, both inbound, outbound, speech IVRs, reporting, workforce optimization, everything that you may need in order to run your contact center, TCN provides some type of software for that. And we've had a lot of experience with a lot of different infrastructures over the years, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking a little bit about today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jesse. So let me give you a quick overview of who Augusto is, and then we're going to move into customer stories with both TCN and Unilog. So, first off, we're one of the oldest and longest-standing Tier 1 partners in the Google ecosystem. We've also helped clients radically improve how their organizations implement cloud services through transformational work that we operate and develop with leadership teams and help them actually get measurable results. We have a number of incredible companies we've been working with throughout the last 10 years with Google. We've been around since 2001, so 18 years in business today. We've helped hundreds of these companies, people, distributed teams, and integrated back offices services deliver collaboration, development, and cloud native products and services. We've innovated with those companies by helping them add impactful services, and we've helped them migrate and modernize their existing workloads. One of the things that makes us different is we help with the entire life cycle of the way those customers go to market and leverage cloud services. So we may work with them at different stages in their own journey as they look at migrating and modernizing the stacks of services that they have with Google Cloud. What's been fun for us is our whole journey. So we started in 2001 as an organization that really focused on consulting services with mid-market companies, doing a lot of managed services and support. And as we pivoted towards understanding the capabilities and the opportunities with cloud, we began first unearthing a G Suite practice way back in 2007 and help companies really collaborate and implement new ways of working together. From there, we were part of Google's initial partner advisory board, chairing that board and helping Google determine how they're going to build and deliver services that SIs and partners could develop and deliver to certain markets. And as we continued to grow across our journey, we did a lot of work in the IoT space, building an acceleration framework to help companies develop and deliver IoT-related connected products much faster, and then also won Google's Global Cloud Platform Partner of the Year that year because of the work that we did. So we continue to work with customers, helping them improve the way that they leverage Cloud Platform as Cloud Platform launched and became more mature. And then recently, over the last few years, we've actually been hired by Google internally to help them and their product managers evolve some of the products that we're all using today as part of their product suite. So it's been a very interesting journey for us. All right, so let me pivot to Unilog, and I think what I want to do to set up this conversation about Unilog is talk a little bit about where Joe and Unilog was when I first started working with them. So this was about 3.5, 4 years ago, when Joe and I first spoke, and we worked closely with Suchit, their CEO, a much smaller organization back then, really taking on an interesting space and solving a problem in a market that was highly underserved. And as Joe mentioned previously, they enrich data, enrich content for their customers in really a unique way. And this caught on very quickly with a number of these sort of greenfield opportunities when you first launch your product. And what was happening is at the time, they were not using cloud platforms of any type. They were delivering premise-based services on this monolithic stack of applications. And the result was Joe was selling a lot, and the operations team was having to figure out how to deal with a very large backlog. And so that's really when we became involved in working with Joe on the first kind of phase of how do they figure out how to solve this problem of getting their customers to market faster, deploying their customers faster, and helping their customers innovate without the operational constraints that they had internally. So let's use that to set things up and talk a bit more about where Unilog was at back then.
Right. So what I'm going to try to do is take you through a little journey of where we were and where we are today, and hopefully where we want to be. And Rick said it very well when he was describing his own company, and he said he had to pivot. If you take a quick look at this slide and you're seeing who we are at Unilog, I like to describe us as the guys, we're the dirty jobs on B2B commerce. The unsexy stuff that people don't talk about is if you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of SKUs, of non-sexy SKUs like pipe, valve, and fittings, someone has to do the hard work of enriching all of that data, normalizing all of that data, gathering all the digital assets, categorizing that data. And on the right side of this slide, you'll see the product content services is how we were born. And we were building that and delivering that to very tier one distributors in North America. But the market of distribution under $1 billion is the masses. In fact, after 10 distributors, you get below $1 billion in sales. So we had to deliver the content in a product information management system that they could digest. And they don't have the budget because they're in a very competitive, low margin space for a tier one PIM like a Stevo or an Enerworks. So we built a product called Catalog Information Material Management, really as a pivot, as a tool to give them a PIM because of the services that we were providing to them. I want you to please go to the next slide and make sure everyone has a good understanding of who we serve, and you'll get to why we do what we do. We sell to specialized hard goods distributors, people that are electrical supply houses, plumbing supply houses, HVAC supply houses. So the products that they sell have engineering specs associated with them. And you need to have all of those enriched attributes if you want to have a fully functioning, good e-commerce B2B site. So for example, even as a homeowner, if you only have a 6-inch gap from your faucet hole to your tub, you need to get at least a 6-inch faucet reach. So that enriched content would not normally be in their ERP systems. If we look at who we serve, electrical, plumbing, HVAC supply houses, believe it or not, with the exception of their B2B commerce, their technology stack, their ERP system, is most likely written in the late 80s, early 90s. So where were we? We saw an incredible, incredible need for e-commerce in this space. We had 9 customers in 2014, but we saw a thirst that needed to be quenched. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see we at that time pivoted and said the services is going to be commoditized. We are now a software company. From 9 customers in the last 4 years, we now have over 150 SIM2 customers. And we pivoted our services, as opposed to just enriching content for you, we now have millions of SKUs, 4 million SKUs, in a content subscription service, much like Apple Music, where they can then pay a monthly service. Now, initially when there was 9, we had problems. We had problems keeping those 9 up. We had problems for speed and scale for the 10th and the 11th. But we had an expectation to go from 10 to 50 in 1 year, and we did. But when we had that expectation, we reached out to Rick and his team and said, we can't do this. Specifically, I can't scale human resources in Philadelphia. I also can't scale computing resources. So I need to scale, and I need speed. I need to scale incredibly rapidly. So we had our challenges, as you can see. Scalability is the big one, security, disaster recovery. And quite frankly, the way we had architected our software, because of our pasts, we inherited some sins of our own past. I'm an ERP developer from the 80s. And we partnered, I think, in 2014.
That's right.
And 4 years later, a couple of things that I'm really happy to say is the growth that we had, those numbers that I gave you in the number of customers, the number of SKUs, and the number of subscription customers, but I still only have 1 in-house systems engineer. And that, to me, was incredibly important. As far as speed, I can spin up another site immediately. Now, also in our journey, Rick and his team challenged us. They actually said we were doing some things architecturally wrong. and they moved us from a monolithic stack to microservices. Now that is a journey that we're still on, and from my experience, it's not like you can put a silver bullet in the chamber and bam, you're there. So we chose specifically our middleware piece first, which we had separate pieces of this software on every instance, and we now have that as one multi-tenant microservices tree. So for me, I could say, what were the results? Well, we scaled incredibly over 4 years. We still have one systems engineer. The speed to our customers is phenomenal. The reliability of the sites is phenomenal. And quite frankly, they've been a good partner. There's choice out there. And people ask me, was it technically the choice? For me, it was bigger. Culturally was more the choice.
Thank you, Joe. And just to level set, one of the things that I think is really important to understand about this story is, how does this affect the experience that they've had with their customers, and how have their customers been able to realize benefit from this? And a big part of it is we have tried to help, as Suchit and their executive team have looked at the future and tried to figure out, where does this product and this service go? How can we help them identify their customer's journey, respond to that need with the impact of new products and new services that they're able to provide, without having to think about operating efficiency anymore. So, where Unilog is at is in the early stage of this multi-tenant journey, both improving the valuation of the company as a whole, but also strategically focusing on what's going to make the highest impact to their customers first, right? And that's really a big part of the story. And now, as we pivot to Jesse and where TCN is at, TCN is sort of at the other stage of phase of modernization. And what's been really cool about Jesse's journey is Jesse already had the insight, and his team understood the benefits of implementing microservices very early on as they stood up their SaaS-based platform. And they were globally distributed as part of their core architecture very early. But Jesse also understood the impact of, I don't want to spend time operating a bunch of infrastructure. I don't want to spend the time managing a bunch of physical network centers. I don't want to pay leases on physical facilities and manage, multi-year agreements. So Jesse's story kind of starts in a lot of ways where Joe's story is now beginning. So let's maybe pivot to Jesse, and Jesse's going to give us kind of the history of his organization and also what they're doing. Hey, Jesse, here's this too.
Yeah, cool. So where TCN is today, and where we've been, that's kind of the story that we're going to go over. So TCN has become a lot more secure in our market. We've started to spread over a lot of different industries, a lot of different verticals. We've begun to become more mature as a company. So I remember, in a lot of ways, this is sort of the ideal startup story, self-funded, bootstrapped company. And we serve call centers from every size, from one seat all the way up to clients with many, many thousands of seats. And that's kind of been one of the challenges, is how do you bring your services to bear at such a wide variety of use cases, such a wide variety of customers. And so where we are today, TCN is, and we are a pretty fast-growing company. Today we have data centers on multiple continents and in multiple countries. So we have only a team of 5 infrastructure folks that manage 5 data centers on 3 continents. And so we were like this even before we moved to GCP. One of the big problems is that we would have to manage all of that infrastructure. And these infrastructure costs, especially in the form of employee costs, were growing non-linearly. So basically, every time we were bringing on a data center, it seems like our costs would grow non-linearly. So some of the reasons for this is basically that there are non-zero costs to maintaining your infrastructure for a SaaS-based company, especially when you're at slightly smaller scale. So I want to go through some of this stuff for you, just for instance. Like when you want to deliver a SaaS-based product, uptime is kind of key. You can't just have one core switch, you need 2. You need to manage your vendor relationships and your warranty procedures and your hardware rotation strategies. You have operating system upgrades, you have firmware updates, you have space leasing negotiations. If you're going to deliver a worldwide service, usually you'll need to go get an ICANN number, And then you'll have to do BGP expertise and networking routing expertise. And then it goes on from there. I mean, disaster recovery plans become more involved and more complex when you're managing your own infrastructure. And, I mean, for instance, you may have hardware that you're managing and you end up with a mean time of a warranty replacement agreement of 4 hours, right? Maybe it's 4 hours, 24/7. But if that goes down on a Tuesday afternoon, that 4 hours is too long. So then you need to make sure that you have a redundant piece of hardware so that that 4 hours doesn't impact your services, right? One of the least fun things I've ever done usually involve staying at the data center overnight because we screwed something up. And then usually that's infrastructure, right? So I don't know how many people have managed infrastructure at scale, but usually if you're in the trenches, if you've ever been in the trenches, you're gonna be at the data center overnight because you screwed up some piece of hardware.
Yeah.
Thankfully, that's been many years since we've actually had to do that. We've kind of got our head on straight since then. And so what we've done at TCN is we've had a journey from operational complexity to operational elegance. So as TCN's grown, because of those nonlinear increase in costs, we've realized that we've really needed to simplify our architecture. There's been a lot of problems around that. I mean, I went over some of the problems. Some of the other problems be that if you open up multiple data centers, you end up running different hardware stacks. And even that increases your operational complexity. And so we were faced with a choice at TCN. We either needed to hire more people, a lot more people it felt like, or we needed to drastically simplify the way that we operate and deliver our services. And so one of the big problems with operational complexity, though, is that the more people you have delivering and operating your services, the fewer people you have delivering customer-facing high-impact services. And that's one of the big costs that goes into some of this stuff. So a hard lesson that most infrastructure providers, or most software providers, software as a service providers, end up coming to grips with is that ultimately customers don't care at all. Literally, they don't care about your infrastructure, right? So usually you don't talk to your customers about your infrastructure unless something with your infrastructure went wrong, and you're writing an incident report that you have to deliver to them because something in your infrastructure went wrong. They don't care about it. What they care about is they care about the promises that you make to them. They care about the amount of time that you've promised to be up. They care about your service level agreements. They care about your service level operations. They don't care about your infrastructure. Your infrastructure, as you develop and build it, are table stakes to delivering your software, your services. They're table stakes for expanding your business. They are not high impact. They're not high impact customer facing features that drive revenue. And people that develop infrastructure or people that manage infrastructure, that usually ends up being a hard lesson. And at TCN, that was a little bit of a lesson and something that we ended up learning along the way. So we've been in business since 1999, and every couple of years, we reimagined the way that we delivered our infrastructure. So everything on this slide that you see are things that we have actually done and delivered our services on. So we've delivered our services directly on hardware nodes. I actually still have one of the first pieces of server equipment that we ever delivered our hardware nodes on. It was an old IBM server that we bought off of eBay. So that's what bootstrap companies do. They buy old IBM services off of eBay and deliver their services to them. So, but we ran directly on hardware nodes. Then we thought, this is getting a little bit too complicated. Let's start abstracting this away a little bit. So the first step of that was we did some light abstraction with Proxmox. And we thought, oh, Proxmox that has some things that we like, some things that we don't like. And we did some research on Solaris zones. And we tried that. Lacked some support for some key libs, some key libraries. It had some challenging performance penalties, and we went through a whole scenario. One of my least favorite things is when we cut over to Smart Data Center, or Solaris zones, and realized that we had some big problems. And that was like a challenging week. I mean, we lit a little bit of a fire under the operations team with that deal. But we worked through it, and we tried OpenStack. These last two are kind of in reverse because we've tried some alternate cloud solutions. And ultimately, what we landed on is that we did Dockerize our components, and we started doing it self-hosted, right? But even with self-hosted Kubernetes, even with self-hosted Kubernetes, there are still a lot of challenges, and some of the challenges that you don't even realize that you have, like kernel and Docker version incompatibilities. Like, how often do people think about that? Not that often, but you're going to think about it a lot if you try it. And so there's a lot of complexity that goes into doing these things, right? We tried some alternate cloud solutions. We tried running self-hosted Kubernetes in different clouds and things like that. But what we ended up experiencing is that we just really needed to sweep a lot of this away. And so all of this story that I'm telling you is, what it comes down to is, what is this? This is not working. Yeah. So where does this lead? I think I think you probably all know where this leads. This ultimately leads to Google Cloud Platform, because that's where TCN ended up. So after all, TCN, we were running all of our infrastructure on Kubernetes before we made the migration to Google Cloud Platform even. And we had all of our infrastructure codified. I mean, that was a big tenet of our company, is being able to produce reproducible pipelines that produce services that were easy to be deployed. And what GCP was able to deliver is that a lot of those problems that I've been talking about, the differences in architecture, the differences in hardware stacks, the vendor relationships, the warranty management, all of these things went away. And so I didn't need to have people that were doing that. So ultimately, when we were spending too much time providing table stakes, we're now able to provide a service that's more up, and Google provides the table stakes. So the things like the OS upgrades, the redundant hardware, the warranty relationships, I don't do any of that. Some of the benefits that we've gotten as we've made this move is we now have the same set of tools to deliver all of our environments, all of our services. We have the same set of tools, the same software, the same systems, the same infrastructure, so we don't have any differences. I mean, we've had a lot of problems in the past when we were running our own hardware that had to do with managing different hardware in different environments. So you open a data center in 2012, and then you open a data center in 2015. The hardware that you purchase at those times is different, especially at a smaller scale, because we don't have the clout to force, long-term hardware manufacturing agreements or anything like that. Our pipelines for delivering software now has no exceptions. Every environment is the same. And so we've really been able to do more with less in our infrastructure. So ultimately, while in dollars and cents terms, we didn't really have a huge difference. I mean, we're still spending pretty close to the same amount of money. But where we really have a big benefit is that we're able to do more with less. So we're able to focus on our core competencies. We're able to deliver the high-impact services that actually drive revenue, that actually bring new customers to the table, new logos to the pipeline. And we spend more time building the house, and we spend a lot less time laying down the plumbing. And so the hard lesson is that customers don't care about your infrastructure, but they do care about features. And ultimately, when you look at it from an internal perspective, it's the infrastructure. When that is settled, that's always your first problem. And when that is settled is when you have the time to actually deliver some features. And so GCP has allowed us to move to a level of operational elegance. And this is a level that I was unsure that we were even going to be able to meet even 5 years ago. I mean, a lot of this stuff is stuff that we've just been dreaming about a little bit. So I appreciate the time that I was able to share this story.
Awesome. Thank you. Bring it back up. Appreciate that, Jesse. And Joe, Jesse's actually quite modest, because the complexity of which his service is delivered to his customers is mind-blowing to me. I worked in the voice space many years ago, and delivering high-quality voice is very difficult. And they've architected a system that has resiliency, and the level of sophistication you can see from them describing that is very impactful to their customers. It's impactful to how their teams operate. It's impactful to his decisioning on what is he going to focus on next, right? And that's really what I think, as we talk about these two organizations, what you don't want as leaders trying to figure out and lay down what the roadmap looks like is you don't want things that are in your way that prevent you from understanding your customer's journey and impacting that in a material way that's going to take you off that target, right? So operationally for Joe, his business early on was, I got to get new customers out of the door and get those out of the door quick enough so that I meet customer expectations, but also to support my growth, right? And the next stage for him is, how do I now move my organizational pipeline into agile development cycles that allow me to rapidly release services to my customers. Instead of doing it on a customer-by-customer basis, I can start doing it across my stack in weeks versus months, right? And for Jesse, Jesse's now thinking about, okay, how can I be more innovative? We had a conversation earlier at our booth about things that he's thinking about that he can now deliver. I would, venture to guess if you weren't living in a world that you are today with microservices and leveraging, Kubernetes, that you would have in the back of your head all those operational challenges on top of it, right? So this frees your mind up to think about things that are more innovative, right?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does. I mean, so I use the example about warranty management, and that's actually a real challenge for people that run their own hardware, especially at scales that are small to medium size, right? So, I mean, you have to manage those contracts, you have to manage those vendors. If you ever do need to do a warranty replacement, you need an employee to allow access to your data center. You need an employee to tell them where to go and make sure they don't pull the wrong thing out, and all of these things that that you have concerns about. I mean, those are real challenges that aren't often in the total cost of ownership math that goes into whether you're going to run on the cloud or whether you're going to run on-prem.
Joe, are you excited about what the opportunities are? I mean, you and I have talked a lot about, and you've written a lot about the importance of listening to the voice of the customer and having that align well with how you deliver services and do it in an impactful way. Tell us a little bit about how you think about that opportunity now that you can start focusing on that more as you get these new multi-tenant services stood up.
Right. Yeah, there's no doubt what Unilog has pivoted to be is the voice of the customer, meaning the industrial distributor. And what we want to do through our platform, SIM2, is be more functionally and feature-rich for functions and features that they need. Now, obviously, when we go to a multi-tenant system and microservices, we can make one change and it happens rapidly. But more importantly, to go back to what you were saying earlier, is the fact that I'm not thinking about hosting the way I used to, the fact that I don't have multiple system engineer, it reminds me of, there was an NBA guy, Mark Eaton, that we actually had speak at our conference, where he says, that's not your job, meaning do your job. And I don't look at what you do as my job. We're on the same team, you're my partner. That's your job. That allows me to do what I do well, which is understand the needs of the distribution space, the hard goods distribution space. And quite frankly, my customers are in a war right now. There's a battle in industrial distribution, and they need partners like me fighting their fight to help them have a better e-commerce presence. And I need partners like you to bring that all together.
I think it's valuable that you mentioned that, Joe, because part of the reason why I think culturally we collectively are good fits is that, we try to look beyond the technology together and understand what's really going to be impactful for ourselves, our customer partners, and their customers. And if we lose sight of the benefit to your end user, and we get caught up in the minutia of the details of the speeds and feeds of the hardware or the speeds and feeds of what's being delivered, it dilutes our value, right, collectively. So I think the way Augusto gets inserted in this a lot of times is we try to help our customers really innovate at the early stages of, okay, what's the impact? We challenge each other. What's the impact of these implementations? Whether it's implementing machine learning modeling that's going to help understand better how you're going to distribute content, rich content to your customer. Whether it's for Jesse thinking about how he can deliver a more impactful customer experience by leveraging intelligence to do that at individual levels, or surfacing data to his customers that really make a difference to how his customers can manage their own SLAs or manage their own individuals that are being held to a certain metric for communication and high quality response rates to their customers. These are all things that I think we tend as technologists to lose sight for, but I think that it's really important that we understand that as organizations, that's what matters, right? At the end of the day, it's, I get excited about technology. I know you do too. We've talked about that. That was part of your own growth. I mean, Jesse is an uber smart guy. He's got uber smart team members that think about these really complex problems, but we sometimes lose sight of how important it is to sort of solve the larger problems. And if we can get this out of our way and pick it up and put it on the sidelines and decide, hey, this is it, right? I can focus on that battle, that war that you're up against, some of the biggest e-com companies in the world, right? That is a concern about disruption. And you want to help your client disrupt their market in a positive way, right?
Well, yeah.
I covered a lot there, Joe. So, but
Well, interesting enough, you had said, sometimes technologists look at technology for the sake of technology as opposed to the business purpose. I don't. I'm the voice of our customer, and we partnered with you and with Google on some machine learning. We're a bit of a hybrid on our classification. So if you go back to who we were, we've been categorizing content, hundreds of thousands of SKUs, manually for 20 years. We now have that in a hybrid format using some of your machine learning techniques to auto-classify in conjunction with ours. So it's not technology for the sake of technology. Say we're using machine learning, through Google to auto-categorize. There's a need. We need to categorize hundreds and now millions of SKUs very rapidly. That's important in B2B e-commerce, is to have a good taxonomy set up. So the needs are real.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think that over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of change. But more importantly, not has only there been a lot of change, the rate of change is actually increasing. And so some of these things, when you want to do it yourself the whole time, you find yourself falling behind because the rate of change changes so quickly. And it doesn't only change so quickly, and I think that's basically what the definition of disruption is that change happens, and it's happening more quickly now than it's ever happened before. And so for TCN, the point was that we don't have time or energy to do it, right? We actually can do it. We've done it. We did it for 20 years almost. So I know that we can do it. I know that my team can do it. I know that I can do it. The question is, what is the best use of your resources so that you can keep up with the rapid rate of change? Just in this morning's keynote, we had a whole bunch of different AI and machine learning demos, and a lot of them have direct applicability to TCN. And these are things that we're thinking about so that we can actually deliver those things. We felt like the direction that Google was going with the cloud matched what we wanted, but also we tested it. So you may remember from our slide, we tested a lot of things, and every couple of years we would reinvent the way that we operated and delivered our software. So the things that made it onto that slide, onto that pipe, are things that we actually ran our software, our production software, our production environment in. We ran our production, we've tried just about everything. So what ended up tipping, though, Google over the edge versus all of the others was two main factors. The number one factor was the GKE. So there's really no better place to run Kubernetes than Google. When we actually started making the transition, I think that the Azure Kubernetes environment was very new, and the Amazon one was still in early alpha. So there's not really any other option if we wanted to remove that piece of operational complexity. And that's been a really great experience for us, that we don't have to do that. The second one was the network performance. So Google, and I don't want to sound too much like a fanboy, but they have a really good knack for setting a spec and nailing it. And so we found that as we tested things, that what they said it was is what it was. And we didn't have that experience with a lot of other vendors that we've tried. Usually, especially for like network characteristics and performance metrics, they would vary a lot within a range. And that was pretty poor when you're delivering real-time voice and services like that. So the network and the GKE, those were the two biggest things for us.
Cool.
I'll answer that question as well. For me, there's two main reasons why we chose Google. One is scale, and the second is partner. Remember who I serve. I serve industrial distributors, and I serve that industry, and it's important for me that who I partner with serves that industry as well, or at least understands my desire to serve them and not annihilate them. So I need a partner who is going to serve my customers as well and can also meet my scale. So it was twofold, scale and culture.
So Joe, maybe you can just expand on how Augusto helped you strategically through some of this early investigation and ultimately delivery.
So it's not only early strategically, I think it's a continued journey. So we're constantly relying on you. But strategically, I think the biggest help that you gave us was for us to reinvent our software. So we're coming out with a completely new platform, of which the middleware piece is now released and the PIM portion of our software. So our software has a number of components in one monolithic stack. We pulled one out, and that's released as a microservice, and the second is in beta now. So strategically, there's no doubt that's been the biggest help that your team has given us.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions that anyone wants to chat about with these two? Okay. With a couple more minutes that we have left, I'll ask a couple others. So, Jesse, I know we talked a little bit about innovation and how you've been able to open up some of your, additional mind share to innovation. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of what your roadmap looks like now, and maybe how the partnership has impacted your ability to focus on maybe more strategic items for your customers?
Sure. So from a high-level point of view, TCN's roadmap is mostly about delivering more services to the customer. So whether that's one big thing that we've been focusing on a little bit is what is called in the industry containment rates. So how many calls can you handle for your customer, or how many interactions can you handle for your customer before those interactions end up going to an agent? And in our industry, especially in the customer service industry, where contact centers are cost centers and not profit centers, you want those containment rates to be very high. And so we're looking at ways to leverage transcription. We're looking at ways to leverage machine learning. We're looking at ways to leverage artificial intelligence so that we can deliver some of these functions. I mean, the other things that we're looking at delivering better reporting, better recording, better transcription tools. But a lot of these things that we are able to focus on a lot more thoroughly just because of what we've been doing in simplifying our infrastructure.
Do you see that these are step changes for you with some of the availability of some of the machine learning APIs that are available and being able to leverage frameworks like TensorFlow, or is it could it be a juxtaposition of you in the market versus your competitors? How does that all shape up?
Yeah, so the contact center market is extremely competitive. So anytime you can get any little advantage, it really helps a lot. So TCN's big advantage is that we're not afraid to serve very small contact centers. We serve very large, but we're also not afraid to serve very small ones. And I don't know, I kind of forgot your question, but
how much of a leap would it be if you differentiated yourself significantly from your competitors by using some of these specifically Google innovative services?
So, I mean, it could be a big leap. The contact center is really competitive, so a lot of these people, a lot of companies are trying to do these same things. So some of it is the leap, and some of it is just trying to stay competitive with the rate of change, right? Yeah. You don't want to be left in the dust. TCN being a 20-year-old company, we have a lot of the same problems that legacy companies have, in that you have technical debt, and moving to GCP has been a strategy for us to eliminate some of that, especially as it goes around managing our infrastructure.
Yeah, it's good. It's Joe, you guys are used to the technical debt challenge, right? We talked about that a lot with some of the way that you're currently architected and where you're going. But with just a few minutes we have left, do you see you being able to maybe do some things that even some of the larger competitors in the market are going to be unable to do, using some of the innovation, like machine learning, like analytics and other interesting services that you can sort of stable as being innovative?
There's no doubt. We can already, to date, right now, today, deliver a B2B e-commerce platform that would allow a mid-sized distributor, a 25 to $500 million distributor have as good, if not a better online presence than some of the real tier one sites. And I know that sounds incredibly arrogant, but if you look at our background, specifically the content team, enriching data, I'm talking old school Excel spreadsheets, 1998, hundreds of thousands of SKUs day in, day out. And my background as an ERP guy, we have some very unique functions and features that are right for their space. And we can continue to concentrate on that because we don't deal with what you do. Something as simple as this: if you go to a tier one retailer, and our customers are not retailers, they're wholesalers. They're actually kind of in between, like call them wholetailers, because you could technically go in and buy a faucet. They would sell it to you, even though you're not a plumber, right? But they're wholesalers. But if you went to a tier one retail site and you want to buy yourself a new grill, and you have a 48-inch opening, but you'll take that box down. You can't make it bigger. And you know that it can be natural gas because you got it piped, but you'll also take, say, propane. Go home today and try to do a faceted navigation on a tier one site to choose multiple attributes of facet A and multiple attributes of facet B. And I'm telling you, 9 out of 10 tier one sites will fail. We don't. Right? And you might say, does that matter? That matters. That stuff matters to the plumber, to the electrician, to who we ultimately, service, which is our customer, right?
They're your customer.
So you doing what you do allows us to do what we like. And quite frankly, I hope you hear it in my voice, I care about that stuff. Like, that's the stuff that I want to go to work and do. Frankly, I don't want to do what you do, which is why you do it, right? And you're a good partner for me. So, if your question was, can I continue to be innovative? The best thing I can do as a company is continue to do what we do well, which is to take our knowledge of distribution and make our platform more functionally rich. And the only way we can do that is not worry about the stuff that you're doing for us. I don't know if I answered your question, but
yeah, you did. I'm excited. I know our team's excited to work with both of you to really help you continue to differentiate what you do in market. And that's what's exciting for me. That's what is exciting for our team. I think that's what ultimately, I think that's why Google's a good partner for us. And I think they're a good partner for you because that's the way that the people at Google think. So thank you both so much for being part of this today. I can't thank you enough. I think it was great to have you here, and I guess I'm excited to hear what you come back with after the show. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Joe.